What's going on, guys? As we all know, Thanksgiving's coming up, and I happen to know the best pecan pie recipe. Let's get straight into it. The ingredients listed above is everything you need for the pie. I recommend pausing the video and writing these down. First, we're going to be making the crust. In a medium-sized bowl, whisk together 1 1/4 cup of flour, 2 teaspoons of sugar, and 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Next, you're going to want to get a stick of butter, and what I did was I cut it into cubes. Make sure the butter's refrigerated. Make sure it's cold. And then you're going to want to work that into your dough with your hands. I recommend squeezing the butter and tearing it until it's about the size of a bean. After each butter chunk is the size of a bean, we're going to add 1 large egg. I recommend mixing this with a spatula or a whisk. Now, if you've ever made dough before, I think we can agree it's not supposed to look like this. But with crust, it's a little different, and it's not supposed to be as doughy, and it's not supposed to bounce back. Pour it onto a counter, start kneading it, and start forming it. After it becomes warm, it should be easier to work with. Once all the flour and dry ingredients have been incorporated, you're going to want to make it into a ball and form a disc-like shape. It's important to note that you want your disc to be round and not have cracks in it. This will cause difficulty whenever you roll it out later. What I'm currently doing is wrapping it in plastic wrap. This will ensure it doesn't dry out while in the refrigerator. After an hour or so, take it out of the refrigerator and unwrap it. Before putting your dough out on the counter, make sure to flour it and make sure to flour the dough. You're going to roll it out to 12 inches, each side in diameter, and then you're going to want to make sure it's 1/8 of an inch thick. I recommend turning your temperature down in your house because the dough will thaw. It will become sticky and it will become hard to work with. While rolling the dough out, you should probably flour the top too so it doesn't stick to the rolling pin. If it does this, it might rip one part and that can mess you up. This did happen to me, but I didn't manage to save it, so that's a win. Also, just for a future note, make sure to sanitize your counter before putting anything on it. I did do this, I wiped everything off, and I still got stuff in mine. So, if that does happen, pick everything off. We're going to be baking this at 400 degrees, so I'm pretty sure it's good. Next up, you're going to want to roll your dough onto the rolling pin. This makes it easy for transferring and moving. It was sticking here to the bottom. I did my best to save it. I used a pastry knife and some flour that caused it to, tear off those parts that were sticking, and then I smoothed it out with more flour on top. Make sure it doesn't stick to the rolling pin, and try not to put too much pressure on the rolling pin. I couldn't show this part because I only have 2 hands, but after rolling it onto the rolling pin, you want to unroll it onto the pie pan. This makes it really easy for transfer and ensures that you won't get any rips. Now, after this, you want to make sure you have around 2 inches to spare hanging off the sides. You want to fold them under, makes a thick part on the crust. And my mom was actually here to record, so shout out to her. And even if you have some short parts, you can always borrow some dough. I didn't have to do that, but it might happen to you. Next, you're going to want to freeze it for 30 minutes. Next, we're going to do a process called blind baking. You're going to want to use dried beans as a weight. You can also use pie weights, but I don't plan on buying those. And then you're going to want to cover them to about 2/3 full. And it doesn't matter what beans you use. Then preheat your oven to 400 degrees if you haven't done that already. And then I recommend covering it with parchment paper. You can also use foil, but I wouldn't do that. I did it last time and it got soggy. You're going to want to bake it for 20 minutes. Take it out. Take the beans out. Then leave it uncovered and bake it for 10 more minutes at 350. Here I added beans on the top of the parchment paper to make sure it wouldn't fold over or fly off or something. I'm sure that wouldn't happen, but you never know. I didn't want to mess my crust up. So if you want to do this, you can. If not, I think you'd be fine. While the pie is baking, we're going to make our filling. Those ingredients you wrote down you might need, so I recommend having them next to you. We're going to cut the butter in half, the butter that we'll need, 5 tablespoons. Make sure it's unsalted butter, and then we're going to put that in a medium saucepan. Next, we're going to add brown sugar, corn syrup, and salt. Bring it to a boil over medium heat while constantly stirring. If you don't stir, it will burn, it won't taste good. It'll become a little bitter and it'll become harder. It'll also ruin the color, so make sure you're stirring. Boil for 1 minute and then take the saucepan off of the heat. Next, you're going to crack 3 large eggs into a glass or a bowl. Then you're going to stir them and lightly beat them. Next, you're going to crush up your pecans. I recommend doing this step after you're done boiling your cornstarch mixture. You're going to add 2 cups of pecans into a Ziploc bag and then cover it with a hand towel. What I did is I used a tenderizer. You're going to beat it until it's pretty crushed up. You can use a knife to just cut them up, but for me that gets everywhere, so I found this easier. I just thought you guys might find it easier too. Just keep doing this. Make sure not to crush them up too much. And I used the soft side of the tenderizer, so I didn't poke a hole in the bag. As you can see, I didn't run out of iPhone storage. I couldn't stop and clear it to take another video because my crust would have burned. It's really unfortunate, but after crushing up your pecans, you're going to want to add it into your filling. Add your vanilla extract. I think it's 3 teaspoons. And you're going to want to let that sit for 5 minutes. Letting it sit cools it down, makes it thicker, because your filling should be kind of liquid right now. And after 5 minutes, you want to add your eggs. Take your pie crust out of the oven after the 10 minutes go by. And you want to add your filling into it. Cover the edges with foil on the pie crust so it doesn't burn in the oven. Preheat your oven to 360 or 350, and you're going to want to bake uncovered for 30 to 40 minutes. The edges of your pie should be stiff and not jiggly, but the middle should be loose. Wait for it to completely cool before you eat, and enjoy. Happy Thanksgiving.